Yeah, hi. This video is about the censorious nature of the authoritarian left within the skeptical community. It was triggered by the deplatforming and subsequent replatforming of Richard Dawkins at the NECSS conference somewhere back east. I'll let Stephen Novella provide the rest of the introduction.
We're coming up to our special report. We're going to do an interesting discussion, and this is the main reason why we have Julia on the show with us this week, other than just it's lovely to have you on as a guest rogue.
Of course.
But we want to talk about free speech versus social justice. Now, what's triggering this is the whole NECSS thing.
I'm going to leave out the details of the whole NECSS affair because they're easily findable.
The thing you have to understand is that no individual person made those decisions. That was made by a committee.
And this is the first problem. Using a committee to hide your individual actions. You need to man up, announce your votes, and either defend them or recant and apologize for them. It's not that difficult.
Let's talk about, Julia, let's talk about that first. Just the whole, what is free speech? What is social justice? When and how do they conflict? How do we resolve those conflicts?
If you can define social justice without using weasel words or deliberately ill-defined terms, I'll eat a vegetable. As far as I can tell, it's just a way to shoehorn the term justice into identity politics with the secondary purpose of tribal identification and virtue signaling.
The question is this particular person, do we want to give this person a platform? And, that's different from the question of, does this person have a legal right to voice their opinions,
Yeah, this is partially the fault of those of us who are on the goodness side of things. The phrase free speech is convenient shorthand, but not exact. Unfortunately, the phrase being open to free exchange of ideas is a bit cumbersome. It's also disingenuous on your part to resort to empty legalism. No one is actually arguing that their First Amendment rights are being violated, except when it's a publicly owned space. They are arguing that you are closing off the dialogue because you are afraid of losing.
Another arena in which this debate often plays out is on college campuses.
Oh, yeah.
Where, speakers are being shouted down by students, or being disinvited because they're too controversial and the students are protesting. There are some positions that we just all agree are reprehensible or unconscionable. So if there were a speaker who is going to speak at a university to argue that, we should reinstitute slavery, or that, all women should be raped whenever they disagree with a man, I think that most people would agree we don't want that speaker. We don't want to legitimize that view. There's some amount of legitimacy that's given to a speaker and, by extension, to his views by giving them a platform.
By that reasoning, we should infer that you approve of using sock puppet accounts, misusing authority that was accidentally granted to you, attacking people from the podium, misrepresenting people's arguments, cherry-picking bad sources to support a predetermined conclusion, and doxing, since these are all things that Rebecca Watson has done over the period of her association with you. What you're arguing is that the virtues of one person somehow are magically imbued into another by their proximity to it, or a relationship, no matter how tangential. I'm sure there's some poster that has a term for that argument. And it's bullshit. Universities have physics departments and gender studies departments. They have engineering departments and sociology departments. Look, I'm a bookseller. I've sold Marx and Rothbard, Freud and Ramachandran, The God Delusion and the Bible, The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, and the Scum Manifesto. No one has ever mistaken the presence or absence of these titles as an endorsement or condemnation of its opposite. I'm starting to think you're a bit elitist in your view of what normal people are capable of.
How big is that set of issues that we consider to be unconscionable and not even worth allowing at our, not even worth giving a platform to? And I think many of the more traditional liberals, for them, that subset would include things like, saying that women or blacks are inferior to men or whites, but it wouldn't include things like, for example, a recent case involved a gay activist, who had been campaigning for gay and queer rights for decades. And there was a big controversy over him speaking at a university. Unfortunately, I can't remember which one, because he had written an essay recently in which he said, as much as I hate it, I think that legally a baker should not be forced to take an order to make a cake that has a pro-gay message on it.
The point is, no one can be trusted to draw that line. Look at the self-styled skeptical community. In order to carry out the carrier agenda, people have been exiled for being too politically incorrect.
We're not saying that. They were not saying this is not where you draw the line. They were saying there is no line. Free speech.
No, I just don't think they really believe that.
I agree with you.
Said.
I agree with you. I don't think they really believe it either. I think they're being intellectually lazy.
So now you have a mind-reading machine, huh? Suppose it's conceivable. You are a neurologist at a research university. If I had one, I'd be on the poker tour making gazillions. You know, you'd be well served if you actually stepped outside of your echo chamber and sat down and talked to people who disagreed with you and listened to their arguments. You wouldn't have to resort to such dismissive hand-waving as, "Oh, I don't think they really believe that."
And I'm very passionate about free speech. I'm currently engaged in a very expensive battle to defend my own free speech. I know how important it is.
This is where I get the idea that you don't really get what free speech is about. It's not just about you or your clique or people who only step a little bit outside of your comfort zone of orthodoxy. When you're passionate about free speech, it's free speech for everybody.
I also very passionately believe in social justice. I think like most people in our movement, I believe in both.
I would say that most skeptics try to avoid adopting a belief based on vague, ill-defined notions like social justice.
You know, if you say, I'm in favor of free speech, but, it's like, stop right there. There is no but. If you're in favor of free speech, that's it. That's the end of the sentence. Wrong. That is actually philosophically wrong. No ethical principle is completely superior to all other ethical principles. There are times when they come into conflict, and you have to figure out how to rectify that.
No one is objecting to reasonable time and manner restrictions on speech. You can't stand outside someone's house with a bullhorn at 3 a.m. shouting, kittens are cute, but you can stand in front of their house with a sign that says, "You're wrong and here's why." Seriously, it's not that hard.
The Supreme Court has ruled that child pornography that involves a real subject is not protected speech, but child pornography that includes a completely CG or CGI subject is protected free speech because there's no direct victim involved in the producing of the material.
A decision which is only minorly wrong.
When free speech causes demonstrable harm to somebody else, it's reasonable to limit that. That's not protected speech.
And this is where the wrongness comes in. Yes, you arrest the people who made it, put them and pound you in the ass prison, you take the usual measures to prevent them from profiting from it, but suppressing the material is not going to unmolest the child. We don't suppress the footage of other types of crimes.
When free speech causes demonstrable harm to somebody else, it's reasonable to limit that. That's not protected speech.
The problem is mere speech can never hurt anybody, unless you're that woman from Kung Fu Hustle, and I'm pretty sure that was acting in special effects.
I think the uncontroversial examples of that are you can't incite people to violence, right? You can't say, go kill this person and rile people up and get them to kill somebody.
I don't know what the legal situation of the matter is, but from what you describe, it sounds like it's bullshit. People have agency. If someone tells me to go kill some guy, I'm perfectly capable of telling them to fuck off. Again, it's not that difficult.
The iconic ones, you can't
fire.
Cry fire in a crowded theater because you're endangering the lives of people with reckless speech.
Yeah, Hitchens pretty much demonstrated that that's bullshit.
We recognize that you can't use speech to cause reputational harm, financial harm.
Those are torts, and actual damage has to be demonstrated in court, and they are never used to prevent people from speaking ahead of time.
Direct physical harm.
Again, you need to demonstrate that that's even possible.
And I think it is reasonable for a community, for a college or for a conference to sort of draw a line in the sand and say, we're not going to infringe on someone's legal rights, of course, we can't do that, but this is the line that defines what kinds of views we want to legitimize in our community.
It's nice to see you back off from the legalism, but the distinction you're failing to make is that controlling what someone can and cannot say at your event is an editorial policy. Booting them for what they said elsewhere is enforcing orthodoxy.
Yeah, you don't have a right to get anything published in the New York Times. That you can't say that they're censoring you or oppressing your free speech because they won't publish your article.
You could try arguing against points people actually make. Here I skipped a bunch that was either redundant or I had no objection to.
Well, what if CG, child pornography, incites a pedophile to rape children? Is that enough?
No! He still has agency. Why is this so difficult for you to understand?
Can we include harassment as harm?
Give me an objective definition.
Stalking?
Give me an objective definition.
Bullying?
Give me an objective definition. In the case of bullying, we have actual bullying, which involves physical assault, but I think you mean the more social justice-y definition of bullying, which is disagreeing vehemently. In that case, no, don't do anything about it.
Violating somebody's civil rights.
Are you using the expression violating someone's civil rights as an item on the list, or is it a blanket term covering the previous three? Since I'm unsure what you mean, I'll just leave it there.
Hurling vicious insults at someone online and outside their door, and like there's certain things that are like actually threatening or incredibly emotionally abusive.
You're conflating. Standing outside someone's door and shouting is not the same as saying mean things on the internet, and threatening someone is not the same as hurting their fifis.
There was this case on a college campus, again, where there were anti-abortion protesters holding up signs that had pictures of aborted fetuses, and a professor at the campus wrangled one of the signs away from the student and I think shoved them in the process, and then and she ran off with the sign and destroyed it, and she stands by her actions, saying that the signs were triggering her, they were causing harm to her, and that was terrorism, actually, she called it. And I don't know if she was disciplined by the university, but...
In other, more accurate words, she assaulted a teenage girl, stole her property, and subsequently destroyed it. If you watched the video and saw the smugness of her demeanor and her facial expressions, you'd realize that the triggering argument was complete bullshit. She pled no contest in the criminal court, got a slap on the wrist, and the university did nothing because, they're lefties and it's okay when they do it.
Whether harassment should be not tolerated just doesn't get us very far.
If you think that harassment is never a reason to limit speech, then that's a pretty clear position.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I would say that it is at least sometimes.
Yeah.
Again, objective standards of time and manner. You're really making this more complicated than it needs to be.
The difficulty with the subjectivity, I think, is that the same kind of rhetoric or the same level of vitriol can be interpreted as harassment if you sympathize with the target, but not as harassment if you don't sympathize with the target.
Yeah, it's good you're all good skeptics and would never do that. You were very quick to notice and point out Devani Harry's damseling, but you never seem to see it when people on your own side are doing it.
Look, this video that Dawkins posted, I don't like it. I think it was, crude and sort of, beneath him. I wouldn't have posted it. But I don't see how that level of discourse is any different from the kinds of things that other skeptics and atheists post, for example, about Christians or about homeopaths.
Yeah, the difference is...
Here come the rationalizations for why it's okay for people you agree with to do it, but not people you disagree with.
It is entirely about the context. The fact that there are women in our movement who are receiving regular rape and death threats, who are literally being harassed out of their own free speech, that are being emotionally abused by misogynists.
Can you give me an example beyond someone saying mean things on the internet? The women you're talking about are pretty much crybabies. They do something hateful and aggressive from the podium, and then when they get something back, they start crying, "Oh no, harassment, misogyny, patriarchy."
Unfortunately, there are trolls in our own movement, or whether or not they're really skeptics or really atheists, who cares? The fact is that they are poisoning the environment.
I don't think you know what trolling means. It's not mean people or people who say nasty things. Ben Franklin was a troll. Alan Sokol was a troll. The guys who cooked up Ern Malley were trolls. Trolling has a great and honorable history of exposing pretense and fraud. You're just using it as a term of abuse to dehumanize people you don't like.
By being actual misogynists. We've had a female co-host on our show for 10 years now, 2 different ones, and I could tell you there's this constant background of sexism.
You need to understand that sexism and anti-feminism are not the same thing.
Against our female co-host. And it's not all Rebecca. Kara,
I can believe that.
Is now, you do face the same thing?
Well, to some extent, yeah.
There's no need to rehash the horrible behavior Rebecca Watson engaged in to earn herself the hate she gets, and Cara Santamaria is obviously a quota hire and an incompetent skeptic, as evidenced by the way she dealt with Thunderfoot, demonstrating that she was wrong. And listen to Julia's half-hearted confirmation of the claims. Perhaps she hasn't received the hate that Rebecca Watson gets because she hasn't done the horrible things that Rebecca Watson does. So it's not about them being women, it's about their behavior.
To some extent, right? There's this background baseline sexism. And then, of course, once Rebecca became a target, then it ramped up orders of magnitude.
There's always going to be a certain baseline level of any psychosocial pathology. I like the sneaky way you went into the passive voice, saying, once Rebecca Watson became a target, ignoring the fact that Rebecca Watson antagonized a shitload of people.
And we saw it. We were there. You can't, and of course, I've heard people on the free speech end say they're making it up. Folks, they're not making it up. We had front row seats. The abuse, the misogyny, the sexism is real.
I once had front row seats to a Chupacabra Bigfoot fight. Believe me, it was real. Come on. Show us the emails with the headers intact. Maybe I'll believe you then. Until that happens, I'm going to continue believing that you're exaggerating the quantity and the severity of the harassment.
The feminists who have been most targeted have become, again, quite understandably, very defensive. I mean,
perhaps they should stop trying to co-opt skepticism and atheism with their identity politics and just go to GynoCon or whatever the hell it is.
Some of them have, I think, taken if you don't have our back and you are not totally with us, then you're against us.
You need to look beyond your community. The social justice people have always been intolerant of dissent. Witness Gamergate.
Like, I feel strongly about free speech and social justice, and there's no reason why we can't have a reasonable discussion in the middle.
There is, and it's this. The social justice people will tolerate no questioning of their articles of faith.
And I have to say, along totally predictable ideological grounds.
I don't know why you're so surprised. Social justice is an authoritarian ideology. It's going to be opposed by all libertarians.
Question of whether, if a woman reports that she was sexually assaulted, should our default response be to assume that she's telling the truth, or should our default response be to withhold judgment until, there's a court case?
Duh! You wait for evidence. You always wait for evidence. And not just for your little evasion of, a legal court case. No, you wait for evidence before you bring out the hate mobs, too.
The group that is more hesitant about some of the positions of social justice, if we want them to also feel welcome in the skeptic community, then we have to also discourage vicious or intellectually lazy or ad hominem attacks on their positions. And
good idea. I'm not going to hold my breath, considering how one-sided this discussion was.
Various skeptic leaders have said things like, if you don't agree fully with, say, atheism plus, then you are disgusting and despicable and you should be kicked into the sewers. They have called people scumbags or scum or witless wankers.
And yet they're continually given places on the podium. Double standard?
I would hope that, the people who, have some hesitation about some parts of the social justice agenda, we want them to feel welcome too.
Yeah, too little too late. I've been out of organized skepticism for years because of the social justice assholes. For you to gain my trust, you're not only going to have to stop doing the douchey shit you've been doing, but kick them out and make sure they never get any leadership positions again.
Yeah, okay. I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll see. It depends on what your panel on this matter at NECSS looks like. If it's as one-sided as this one, I'm not buying it. How about inviting Thunderfoot? He's probably a bigger draw than Richard Dawkins. Which brings me to a point that didn't splice in well with the rest of the video. I don't think your deplatforming of Richard Dawkins represents a true change of heart. I think you got too many refund requests, and we're looking at having a failed conference. Until I see numbers that say otherwise, I'm going to continue to believe that. I think you need to look beyond the skeptic community to understand what's going on. Everywhere they go, feminists are trying to squelch dissent. Everywhere they go, feminists are weaponizing harassment claims. And this is always met by silence from other feminists. They are not to be trusted. Bye.